Hey everyone, I want you to do something really quick for me. Reach down and just pinch the fabric of the shirt you're wearing right now. Feel that texture, the weave, the strength of the material between your fingers? It feels completely permanent, doesn't it? Like it's a finished, solid thing. But actually, just a few months ago, that exact material you were touching was quite literally growing out of the dirt. Welcome to today's explainer, where we're going to trace one of the most incredible physical metamorphoses in all of human engineering.
Because that really is the core question we're answering today. How exactly does a fragile, fluffy little plant transform into the durable fabric on your back? In the visual map we've put together, we're going to treat raw cotton as the main character on a massive, highly mechanized industrial journey. We'll trace its path straight from nature, onto the factory floor, and finally to the finished bolt of cloth.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our exact 5-step roadmap. First, the raw cotton harvest. Second, spinning fibers into yarn. Third, weaving on the loom. Fourth, the dyeing process. And number 5, final inspection and packaging. Kicking things off with step 1, the raw cotton harvest. This right here is the quiet, agricultural beginning of all textile manufacturing.
If you look up at the top left of this image, you can see where it all begins. Way before the heavy machinery, before the dyes and the chemical baths, we start here. We've got workers standing out in a vast, sunlit field that's just bursting with blooming cotton. It's a completely natural, almost sensory scene. The raw cotton, while it's still sitting on the plant, is incredibly delicate. It's fluffy, it's fragile, and it is totally vulnerable to the elements. This is our raw material in its purest, most untouched form. But it definitely doesn't stay in that delicate state for very long. Right after the harvest, as you can see down in this next section, the plant has been stripped from the fields, gathered up, and tightly compacted into these massive, dense white bales. You can actually see the workers in the warehouse wrestling with these super heavy units. The cotton has officially left the farm at this point. It is now a standardized industrial commodity sitting in a warehouse, basically just waiting to be fed into the manufacturing beast. And this brilliantly illustrates the very first dramatic shift in our material's life cycle. On one hand, you have the field cotton, fragile, loose, and these entirely natural bolls just catching the breeze. And then on the other side, you have the baled cotton, heavy, dense, utilitarian blocks that are strictly designed for transport and mass production. Which brings us to step 2, spinning fibers into yarn. This is exactly where we start creating real strength from those loose, chaotic threads. Now, before we look at the heavy machinery, let's briefly define the actual engineering challenge being solved on the factory floor. Spinning is basically the mechanical process of taking those raw, loose fibers from the bales, drying them out, and twisting them together. This rapid twisting action is the absolute key. It's what binds the short fibers into a single, continuous, and remarkably strong piece of yarn. Because frankly, without this step, you have no tension. And without tension, you have no fabric. Now, what's truly staggering here is the sheer scale of the transformation. Just look closely at this factory shot. We've moved from that quiet warehouse into a high-speed industrial environment. Look at those incredibly long receding rows of spinning frames. All those chaotic, fluffy fibers from the bales are being violently yet beautifully organized by these machines. The result? Thousands of perfectly neat, identical cones of bright white yarn, all lined up and ready for the next phase. It's like the chaos of nature has been mathematically ordered. With our strong yarn prepped and ready, we enter step 3, weaving on the loom. This is where the textile itself is actually born. Looking at this section of the process, you can see those individual cones of yarn being fed directly into a mechanical loom. You can literally watch the structural magic happening here. The machine is grabbing thousands of individual spun threads and rapidly interlacing them at right angles. Notice what is emerging from the machine. It's no longer just string. It is a solid, cohesive, intricately patterned red and white piece of cloth. The threads have been physically locked together to form a recognizable textile. Once the fabric is woven, it needs a little character. That brings us to step 4, the dyeing process, where we add vibrant color to the woven cloth. This is where the whole process gets wet, chemical, and highly visual. Look at this massive churning vat. The raw fabric is being continuously pulled by heavy machinery through this bath of incredibly bright, saturated pink and red dye. It is a total sensory splash. The fabric is absorbing all those chemicals, completely changing its aesthetic profile from a raw, natural finish to a vibrant, specific color designed totally for consumer appeal. Let's move along and see how this builds in the next stage. After exiting that intense dye bath, the massive wet sheets of now solid red fabric have to be processed. You can see this large blue machine smoothing out the wide sheets, pressing them, drying them, and rolling them. The color is totally locked in now. It's uniform. The fabric is smooth, vibrant, and honestly, looks exactly like something you'd see hanging in a tailor shop. But the machines don't get the final say. We're stepping out of that noisy, high-speed production line and entering step 5, final inspection and packaging. I absolutely love this image here because there is this poetic return of human hands to the process. After all that aggressive industrial stamping, twisting, and chemical dyeing, the fabric is finally laid out flat on a brightly lit table. We've got 3 guys standing over it, literally running their hands across the grain, meticulously inspecting the material. It's this quiet, careful moment of pure quality control, the human eye double-checking the machine's work. So the crucial point here is understanding exactly what these inspectors are searching for before this material ever reaches you. They're checking for color consistency. Did the dye take evenly across the entire sheet? They are hunting for microscopic tears or any mechanical defects that might have happened back on the loom. And they are verifying the weave tension and the overall integrity of the fabric. Only if it passes this human test is it deemed ready for consumers. Which brings us to our ultimate destination right here. The fabric has passed inspection, it's been perfectly tightly rolled onto spools by the workers, and if you look really closely at the finished roll on the machine, you can see it's been branded. It proudly reads Premium Rosani Cotton. It's got an identity now. It's packaged, pristine, and ready to be shipped out into the world to become the garments we wear every single day. Just take a step back for a second and look at the incredible metamorphosis this material just survived. 1. Harvested by hand in sunlit fields. 2. Aggressively spun into continuous yarn. 3. Mathematically woven on massive industrial looms. 4. Chemically dyed in saturated vats. And 5. Meticulously inspected for premium quality. It really is a massive triumph of engineering and logistics. The sheer scale of the transformation is staggering. We take it for granted, but every single inch of fabric you interact with has traveled this exact path. From a fluffy, fragile little plant sitting in the dirt to the tough, durable, perfectly colored fabric sitting on your back right now. Which leaves me with one final thought for you. Tomorrow morning, when you open your closet and pull out a simple cotton shirt, will you just see a piece of clothing? Or will you feel the fields, the warehouses, the spinning frames, those massive dye vats, and the thousands of intricate steps physically woven into its very threads? Because once you understand the journey, there is just no way you ever look at your clothes the same way again. Welcome to this explainer. Let's just jump right in, shall we? Today, we're demystifying that incredible journey of how a raw roll of fabric actually becomes a finished garment. We wear clothes literally every single day. Billions of garments are produced globally every year, but how often do we get to see the highly orchestrated process that brings them to life from start to finish? It's this hidden world of synchronized chaos and exact science, and I promise you, by the end of this breakdown, you're going to look at your own wardrobe in a completely different light. When we step back for a macro view of the bustling factory floor, it is an absolute marvel of modern manufacturing. We're talking about a highly organized ecosystem here. Massive, heavy rolls of raw material come in on one side, and perfectly assembled, ready-to-wear garments head out the other. And what's really striking is this incredible interplay between high-tech automation and exceptionally skilled human labor. Every single station, every single worker is part of a flowing river of production. If one part stops, the whole thing grinds to a halt. Here's our roadmap for the tour today. We'll kick things off with automated precision cutting, move into computerized multi-head embroidery, hit the industrial sewing floor, and finally wrap up with final assembly and inspection. All right, starting with step 1, automated precision cutting, where we slice out the geometry of a garment. Now, before a single stitch is actually made, the raw material goes through 3 vital prep phases. First, there's spreading the fabric, then automated cutting, and finally, piece sorting. Sorting might sound kind of basic, right? Almost like an afterthought. But trust me, this is meticulous, high-stakes work. If someone mixes up, say, a medium sleeve with a large collar piece right here at step 3, well, that completely ruins an entire batch of garments way down the assembly line. Precision right out of the gate is absolutely everything. Notice how the vibrant red fabric is rolled out across these incredibly long tables to process a staggering volume all at once. The fabric itself is pre-marked with these stark white geometric outlines representing all the distinct panels of the garment. The sleeves, the front, the back, the whole shebang. It's basically a giant, complex puzzle mapped out perfectly to ensure almost zero waste. And honestly, just the logistics of placing these lines correctly saves factories millions of dollars in material costs every single year. Now, instead of someone standing there for hours with heavy shears, a high-powered automated blade just rapidly and flawlessly slices through those shapes like butter. The precision here is wild. We're talking measured in mere millimeters. Often, a computerized vacuum system holds the fabric perfectly flat while a razor-sharp blade moves at blinding speeds. You can even see a worker's hand poised right next to the machine, totally ready to collect and bundle those freshly cut pieces for the next stage of production. Moving on to Section 2, Computerized Multi-Head Embroidery, which is all about synchronized, programmed precision. So here, we've got synchronized embroidery heads working in this perfect, rhythmic unison. They're firing at hundreds, sometimes thousands of stitches per minute. They're embedding these intricate gold and white floral patterns directly into the red fabric panels. And the real brains of this operation, it's that digital monitor over on the right, directing every single needle plunge across multiple pieces, all at exactly the same time. It guarantees this pixel-perfect consistency across, 100 different shirts at once. Which brings us to a really crucial turning point. We've just seen the synchronized, programmed precision, the tech, right? But the touch is just as vital. Why? Well, because while technology gives us high-speed, exact 2D digital replication, taking a floppy, totally unpredictable piece of fabric and turning it into a three-dimensional garment, that still requires unparalleled human dexterity. It takes tactile, micro-adjustments the billion-dollar robotic arms simply haven't mastered yet. A robot can cut straight lines beautifully, for sure, but it can't easily feel the tension of a curved seam. And that brings us to Section 3, the industrial sewing floor, the power of the human touch. Stepping onto the industrial sewing floor, you immediately notice vast rows of highly skilled workers. They're deeply focused, expertly guiding the cut and embroidered fabric under these rapidly moving needles. This is kind of the magical moment where flat, two-dimensional pieces are finally joined together to create the 3D shape of something you can actually wear. It's a symphony of human movement, really, with each station handling a specific task. One attaches a collar, the next closes a side seam, over and over again. The sheer scale here is absolutely staggering. We're talking hundreds of identical pieces flying through this line every single hour. It takes a massive team working in perfect, rhythmic tandem just to keep the assembly line flowing without a bottleneck. Every single seam, every collar, every hem, it's being guided by a human hand. It's a pretty powerful reminder that despite all of our amazing tech advancements, the multi-trillion-dollar garment industry is still fundamentally built on manual, human craftsmanship. Finally, Section 4, Final Assembly and Inspection. This is the final quality check. We reach the end of the line here, where workers meticulously inspect, finish, and fold each completed garment entirely by hand. Before anything is packaged and shipped across the world to your local store, human eyes literally have to verify that the embroidery is pristine, the seams are straight, and the presentation is absolutely flawless. Any loose thread is snipped, any slight defect is caught right here. This is the ultimate human quality control before a garment earns its price tag. Thinking about this visual journey through the factory, it really brings a whole new meaning to the quote, "Modern fashion relies equally on the cold precision of technology and the nuanced skill of human hands." It truly is a remarkable partnership when you think about it. The machines provide the unfailing speed and exact geometry, while the human workers provide the irreplaceable intuition and care. You simply can't have mass-market fashion without both halves of this equation working in perfect harmony. So, I'll leave you with this final thought to ponder. Tomorrow morning, when you pull your favorite shirt out of the closet, will you feel the hidden journey of automated blades and human hands stitched right into its seams? Thanks so much for exploring this incredible process with me today.
Let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're taking a really cool, highly visual, behind-the-scenes journey through what I like to call the invisible final steps of the textile industry. We often think about fashion in two completely isolated moments, right? We picture the sweeping fields where raw materials are harvested, and then we picture the glowing, perfect displays in our favorite stores. But there is this massive, fascinating transitional space in between. In this explainer, we're going to look really closely at the exact moments manufactured fabric is transformed into absolute retail perfection. So I want you to think about the last time you bought a brand new piece of clothing. Think about that crisp, perfect fold, that flawless finish, that specific, pristine feeling that tells your brain, oh yeah, this is brand new. How exactly does a garment fresh off a dusty, bustling factory floor suddenly get that premium store feel? Well, it's not magic. It's an incredibly precise, multi-staged industrial process, and we are about to map out every single step of that journey together. Okay, let's dive into this and lay out our path for today. First, we'll look at the crucial quality check. Second, precision steam pressing. Third, folding and protective packaging. Fourth, the warehouse waiting game. And finally, number 5, the final retail showcase.
Starting things off with Section 1, the crucial quality check.
So the sewing machines have literally just powered down. The fabric has been cut, stitched, and assembled into a recognizable piece of clothing. But the work, it is far from over. This is the absolute essence of invisible labor. An inspector carefully examines a newly stitched red garment right on the rack. In an industry totally dominated by automated looms and high-speed sewing machines, this specific moment relies entirely on human hands and meticulous human eyes. Every single piece of clothing must pass through a total gauntlet of visual and physical inspection before it can even be considered for retail. They're scanning for absolute perfection, and honestly, it's a monumental task.
So, the crucial point here is that this inspector isn't just giving the garment a quick once-over. No way. They're running through a rigorous, uncompromising mental checklist. They are testing the seam integrity, literally pulling on it gently to ensure the stitching is going to hold up to everyday wear. They're checking the embroidery alignment, making sure those intricate patterns we saw stitched earlier are perfectly centered and totally free of loose threads. And they are ensuring total fabric flawlessness, rejecting any piece with even a tiny snag, a dye inconsistency, or an oil spot from the sewing machines. Only the garments that score a perfect 100% get to move on.
Which brings us to Section 2, Precision Steam Pressing.
Once the garment actually passes that super strict quality check, it's time for the physical transformation. And wow, you can almost feel the intense heat radiating off this heavy-duty industrial steam press. Make no mistake, this is not the little iron sitting in your laundry room. This is a massive piece of equipment specifically designed to blast high-temperature steam deep into the fibers of the fabric. Imagine the loud, rhythmic hiss of the steam releasing as that heavy upper plate comes slamming down. It instantly smooths out every single industrial wrinkle, reshaping the raw, somewhat limp fabric into a sharp, crisp, structurally sound garment. This is the exact moment the clothing really gets its posture.
Moving right along to Section 3, folding and protective packaging.
Now, what's really interesting about this next phase is that now that the garment is perfectly smooth and holding its shape, it's also highly vulnerable. Any dust, any moisture, any slight mishandling could totally ruin it. Notice the huge contrast in the workflow here. We literally just left heavy, hissing machinery, and now we enter the quiet, rhythmic precision of a dedicated folding team. They use these measured, practiced movements to fold the garment so that the intricate front embroidery is perfectly showcased. Then comes the satisfying crisp snap of sliding it right into that premium branded poly bag. That plastic barrier, it is everything. It locks in the cleanliness, it preserves the crispness from the steam press, and it essentially transforms the item from a manufactured good into a branded retail product. To really wrap our heads around the immense value added in just these last few minutes of production, let's look at this comparison. On one side, we've got the raw garment right off the sewing line, unchecked, full of wrinkles from handling, and totally vulnerable to damage. On the flip side, the retail-ready garment, thoroughly inspected, pressed incredibly crisp, sealed against the elements, and proudly carrying the brand's premium identity. It is a night and day difference, and it's achieved through intense, coordinated effort.
Now for Section 4, the warehouse waiting game.
With the garments now sealed and boxed up, the whole pacing of our journey shifts dramatically. Just look at the sheer scale of this space. Gone are the bright red fabrics and the close-ups of human hands from the factory floor. Instead, what we see are towering, perfectly aligned stacks of uniform brown corrugated boxes stretching all the way to the back wall. It's this massive structure of logistics, entirely defined by quiet anticipation. Inside those boxes are thousands of perfectly pressed, meticulously inspected garments, just sitting in the dark, waiting for the signal to be shipped across the country or even across the world. And this brilliantly illustrates a staggering shift in scale. A single, beautifully crafted red shirt, which, remember, we just watched being individually inspected by a single worker and carefully pressed by a single machine, suddenly scales up into the thousands. It literally becomes data in a warehouse management system. It becomes a barcode on a wooden pallet. This is exactly where individual craftsmanship meets the staggering, massive volume of global commerce.
And finally, Section 5, the final retail showcase. Let's move to the end of the line and see how this all builds up. A box is loaded onto a truck, the doors open, and our garment finally arrives at its ultimate destination. Here we are at the boutique rack. The garments are now beautifully displayed on mannequins under warm, inviting lighting. The premium signage is hung up, the poly bags are gone, and the fabric is allowed to drape perfectly. But when you look at this pristine retail display, I really want you to see the echoes of the factory. That perfect drape? That's thanks to the heavy steam press. That flawless stitching is thanks to the eagle-eyed inspector. The crispness is thanks to the careful folding team. The boutique is really just a stage. The factory is where the performance actually happened.
Which brings us to our final thought for this explainer. The next time you walk into a beautifully lit boutique, reach out and pull a pristine, flawless outfit off the rack. Will you see the journey it took to get there? Will you remember the intense heat of the press, the rhythmic snap of the packaging, and the quiet vastness of the warehouse? There is incredible, invisible labor hidden in the seams of everything we wear. Thanks so much for joining me on this journey today, and hey, keep looking closely at the world around you.